Hello, and welcome to Real Stories Uncovered. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Karen at my school food fair accuses me of using drugs when I desperately needed my EpiPen for an allergic reaction. She ends up breaking it and laughing it off. But little did she know the consequences of her reckless actions. Here's what happened. So it was food fair day at my school. The one day in the year where the school got together and everyone brought in food from their respective cultures to share a fantastic day of culinary exploration was interrupted only by the occasional bout of food poisoning. So I'm a 16-year-old guy with an average build a bit on the skinny side. I have an ungodly metabolism that requires a steady influx of food to keep me upright. There was just one minor complication. I'm allergic to tree nuts. Not deathly so, but enough that it could land me in the hospital if I'm not careful. I had my trusty EpiPen by my side, but I was hoping not to use it. The food stalls were a sight to behold. A kaleidoscope of colors and smells that made my stomach rumble in anticipation. As I wandered around, sampling this and that, my eyes fell on a stall with an array of Mediterranean desserts. I'm a sucker for things. And before I knew it, I had grabbed a piece of baklava. The first bite was divine, a symphony of honey, pillows, and something else. That's something else that hit me with the force of a freight train. Nuts. Tree nuts. I could feel the familiar itchiness creeping up my throat, and I knew I was in trouble. I fumbled for my EpiPen when a sharp voice interrupted me. "What are you doing, young man?" Mrs. Karen, my math teacher, who earned her nickname for her uncanny resemblance to every entitled parent meme on the internet, was glaring at me. She had a reputation for being a stickler, but this was a new level even for her. "Mrs. Karen," I croaked out, "I need to use this. I'm having an allergic reaction." She snatched the EpiPen from my hand, squinting at it suspiciously. "This looks like a drug. Are you trying to use drugs in school?" "What?" "No, it's an EpiPen. I need it to save your lies." She cut me off with a derisive snort. "I know what you kids do for drugs these days. I'm taking you to the principal's office." "You've got to be kidding me," I said, my throat itching even more. Mrs. Karen started walking away, but I couldn't take my EpiPen. I ran after her, but my throat was closing up. The world started to blur at the edges, and I was gasping for air. I managed to grab her hand, and in the ensuing struggle, the EpiPen hit the floor, shattering into pieces. I stared at the broken EpiPen. A cold dread was washing over me. "Are you insane?" I screamed. My voice is raspy. I needed that. But Miss Karen just laughed, oblivious to my panic. "Sure you did," she said. Sarcasm dripped from her voice. I've heard better excuses. There I was, looking at the shattered EpiPen on the ground, a mix of panic and anger boiling inside me. "You've got to be freaking kidding me," I wheezed, barely able to keep myself upright. Miss Karen just smirked. Triumph sparkled in her eyes. "You can't fool me, young man." "Mrs. Karen, I swear if I don't get to a hospital, I won't get there." I didn't finish the sentence, but the sentiment was clear. I was desperate and needed help. A bystander student named Jack stepped in. "Dude, he's not faking it. I've seen him have a reaction before. It's an EpiPen, not a drug." Mrs. Karen looked at him, back at me, and her smirk wavered a little. "Well, he can explain it to the principal then," she said, grabbing my arm to drag me to the office. "No, he can't," Jack said, firmly pulling my arm away from Mrs. Karen. "Because if we don't call an ambulance right now, he might not be able to explain anything to anyone." Mrs. Karen scoffed. "I'm not going to be threatened by some teenager." "It's not a threat. It's a fact," Jack said, pulling out his phone and dialing 911. With the help of Jack and some friends, I was able to make it through the next half hour. My symptoms are worsening, but not to the point of unconsciousness. We managed to grab another EpiPen from the school nurse, who was thankfully nearby, just as the ambulance arrived. The aftermath was a whirlwind of hospital checks, worried parents, and heated discussions with the school board. My parents were livid, demanding immediate action against Mrs. Karen. After an investigation, multiple witnesses came forward, including Jack. The school board concluded that Mrs. Karen's actions were reckless and jeopardized my safety. She was promptly fired. She tried to argue with Kay, spinning a tale about her crusade against drug use in school, but it was clear to everyone that she had been in the wrong. Her dismissal was a small victory, but it didn't erase the trauma of the day. From then on, I was always careful at food fairs, and I always carried 2 EpiPens, just in case one turned out not to be enough. Whoa, Opie, this story is just a wild ride from start to finish. Can you believe the nerve of this Karen? She straight up accused OP of drug use in the middle of an allergic reaction. It's like, hey, that's an EpiPen, not a joint. And then she laughs off breaking the EpiPen. I mean, I've heard of Karens being entitled, but this takes it to a whole new level of crazy. This could have ended way worse if it weren't for Jack's quick thinking. I mean, Jack for the win, am I right? And when the school board actually fires her, man, talk about sweet, sweet karma. But honestly, it's really terrifying to think about what could have happened. It's like she was living in her own reality, completely disconnected from the seriousness of the situation. Now, Opie always carries 2 EpiPens. I can't blame him for that. It's scary that it had to come to this. But hey, better safe than sorry. Have any of you ever been in a similar situation? Let me know in the comments below.